What are we
That's
doing?
Siman Ches through Chaf Aleph.
S through Chaf Aleph.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to do a double tonight because of your upcoming travels.
No, we'll stick with the. Okay. Ches, yeah. So yesh li zar milahoisi etzar chas. So this is talking about yastam yenum or yayin nesach, these halachas. So siman mem zayin ois ches. Yesh li zar milahoisi etzar chatzana v'azagim v'nagitas al yedei goy. One should be careful to take, meaning you have to take out the junk out of the wine. So make sure that you don't have a goy taking out the skins or the seeds through a goy. Even after you already squeezed out the skins twice, which means there's probably not much wine left in the kishema yeshlem yayin. Maybe there's still a little bit of moist wine on those pieces, and therefore it's going to be a yayin, a stam yayin issue. All right? Okay. Test. Goy sheshafach mayim l'seich hayayin. Let's say a goy is pouring water into the wine. So if his kavanah was to mix it, then it's also to drink. And if he did not have a kavanah to mix it, afilu suffix, even if it's a suffix, mutter, it is mutter. Because he has to have kavanah to dilute it. Yud chaymetz yayin shenasam yayin kosher. So vinegar that was made from real wine, kosher wine. Imu chazak kol kach shemavaveya. So if the vinegar is so strong, shemavaveya, that it bubbles, when you pour it on the ground, shuven and goy, then it no longer becomes also. Meaning this is talking about when the vinegar already, meaning the guy never touched it till it became vinegar. So if it's so strong that it bubbles, then it's lost the status of wine. But it was made from stam yeno, then it remains also. Meaning, if you took the guy's wine and you made vinegar out of it, then that vinegar is going to be a problem, because it was the vinegar was also from when it was in the wine stage. Schnapps that comes from stam yenom. That's not really sherry casks, right? Sherry casks is that they just using casks that have sherry in it. This is where you're actually making schnapps from wine. And if they make the hard alcohol, hard liquor from the skins or from the seeds or from the dregs, that's considered like wine itself. But if you made schnapps from kosher wine, then once it becomes into whatever you want to call it, scotch, whiskey, whatever it would become, then the guy doesn't touch it. So basically the rule is that when something becomes a new entity, even though it comes from wine, and that's when the guy touches it, then it's no problem. It's only a problem when the guy touches it when it still is in that stage of wine. Yud Beis, melach shel yayin, that's a salt of wine, Feinstein.
Well, it's ultimately saying sherry cask is ultimately not a problem according to the Kitzur, because he's not touching it. The cask is done.
No, because the problem is that the wine that's going into the wine that went into these barrels was yayin nesach or stam yenam. So now the wine, the taste coming out of those barrels is stam yenam going into it. So that's a problem, right? It's looked at like this actual stam yenam inside the schnapps.
Even though it's completely dry, even though it's completely dried out barrel.
Yeah. We're going to discuss it. We're going to get to it a little bit more later on in the simon. So let's see. So Melech Shel Yain Weinstein. I don't know what that was. It's tartar. That's the way the English Kitzur has it. Right? It's some sort of residue, wine residue. So Nispasha Minig Lahate says it seems like the minig is to allow that. Kimin she'ein by hana l'chech. So it doesn't taste good, so there's no hana to the palate. So therefore, they did not answer it. But even though it seems like he's saying the minig is to matter it. He's not giving it a resounding haskama. Okay, Yud Gimel. Maga
I
Shulgoy
believe the OK had a whole article on how they make tartar, how it's mamish like burnt in the ground. It's like mias, the whole thing.
Tartar, which type of tartar?
The tartar, whatever they have, like cream of tartar, they use it like in commercial ingredients.
It's I don't know. It sounds like it's not, doesn't taste good, whatever. Fine. Maga Goy, let's say the guy touches it through something else. Meaning he has a stick or a straw or something like that. And if it comes from his koyach, then ask and if that's called a guy touching the wine. Then of course you have the minig of the chassidim. That they hold that a guy can't even look at the wine. Right? Now the chayr of that minig should only be that they can't make kiddush from that wine, but stam to drink it shouldn't be a problem. And then the question is, do they see the wine like through a glass, or even they have to see the actual wine? Nowadays, see them are very makbid, right? Like Naftali always says, he worked for Kedem. There were no goyim involved at all, right? And until they got into the cases. Yeah.
They even have, for some places, even the cases can't be handled by goyim.
Yeah.
Yeah. I told you they asked me to deliver to some place in Williamsburg, and the guy thought I was a guy, and he went behind to call them. It was all in cases, so they called me up and asked me to show him my tzitzis and take off my cap. So he gave me $100 tip once he realized.
He's kedai.
You're the most Jewish-looking person I know.
Yeah.
I was a
different
teenager
kufas in life.
Yeah,
different kufas in life. Okay, Yudalit Hashalech Yain Al Yidei Goy. If somebody sends wine with a guy, so we had this already 2 simonim ago or 3. Tzarach lashkiach heitev b'chol makom sheyesh barza and megufa. You have to be careful wherever there's an opening, a spout, anything like that. Lachtam sham b'shnei chesamas. You need the 2 seals there. Meaning, not only do you need the 2 seals at the top of the barrel where they can open it, you need 2 seals and anywhere on it because they can access the wine that way. Tesvav Yisrael shows a yenashal guy behechsher. Let's say a yid is producing wine for a guy. Meaning a guy said, "Oh, these Jews are not buying my wine." So somebody tells him, "Yeah, you got to have all Jewish customers and Jewish workers, and then you'll get your Jewish customers." So that's what he did. So if yesh bazeh kamechluki dinim, so the kids are not so happy with this. There's many different dinim. Sometimes not even 2 seals will help, and not even a lock will help. You have to ask a Moira exactly how to do this. Like how to halachically do this. Because that's somebody who's a shomer nefesh should distance himself from this line of work. Tezayin kelim shestam yenom. Oh, so here we go with the wine with the sherry casks. So Kalim, it's not going to give us that much insight, but at least a basic insight. So Kalim shel stam yenim, utensils made with stam yenim. Imhem Kalim sheina derech lahachzik ben yayin elazman kotzar. So if it's Kalim that the derech is not to hold wine in there for long term, only for a small amount of time. Let's say like it's a flask. Pain shame shall or, pain shame shall eight, shall schuchus, shall evan, shall matchus. And it wasn't, the wine did not sit in this thing for 24 hours, regardless of whether it's made out of leather, wood, glass, stone, metal. Im enam mizufasin, if they're not lined with like pitch, medichan heitev, then all you have to do to kasha them is wash them well. B'mayim shalosh pa'amim, we wash them well in water 3 times. Umutarim and then they're mutter. But if they're lined with pitch, yeshlem din acher, they have a whole different din. Klicheres yeshlem din acher. Klicheres also has a different din, right? meaning because those are much harder to kasha, because we don't normally kasha earthenware. And the same thing with this if it's lined with this pitch, so then it's much harder to kasha. Fine, Yud Zayin. Kalim asuyim lahachnas mem yain lekiyum. Kalim that you're going to put the wine, you're going to store the wine in there, like the sherry casks. Right? So you're keeping there for 3 days. Even though the barrel is owned by a yid, and the wine is only going to be in there for a small amount of time. You have to wait. Only way to kasher these barrels is to do with irui. So what you have to do is you have to fill up the barrel with water until it goes over the top. And you need to leave the water in there for a minimum 24 hours from Eisleis, meaning a full 24 hours. Then you pour out the water, and then you put a second water in there. And then you leave it that way at the minimum. So you have to do this 3 times. It's called milui ve'iroi, is the way the pasuk discuss it, is you fill it up. And alternatively, you can leave the barrel in a tub for 24 hours. You do that 3 times, and that kashers it. And it does not have to be 3 consecutive 24-hour slots. You could do it once a week or whenever. And on the other hand, if you left it in the water for many days and you didn't spill it out, that only works for 1 24-hour. I mean, you have to spill out the water and then do this process 2 more times. And there are those that say that if the wine is in there for 24 hours, then this doesn't help either. It does not help with pouring, because there's a rule in kashrus, which is that anything pickled is like it was cooked with heat. So anything, and that's defined as if something sits in there for 24 hours, like a milk bottle, right? So our plastic milk bottles are considered fully dairy because the milk sits in there for 24 hours. And even though it's cold, but since it's there for 24 hours, so then it becomes dairy. So the same thing with these, they bamish, it's as if the wine was cooked, uboy hagala, and then it needs hagala. And if it's not a tzarek gadol, one should be machmer, that if you do get barrels from the goyim, and it was filled with wine for more than 24 hours, then they should be kashered with hagala, which they don't do to the sherry casks. So that's part. So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch sounds like at least lechatchila do it. But the Eved, which is what our cases all are, so then that's a problem. I mean, it's not a problem. Well, it's debatable. Interesting though, with filling it up for 24 hours. So let's say a beer, a keg. So
like a bar or whatever.
Right. So a bar will not be considered sitting for 24 hours because.
Right. That's why I'm saying that's why you're allowed to drink it, because it's not.
Well, you don't know what else they're keeping there. Usually kegs in the bar, it's just beer. No, we're talking about that we're saying that it's a problem if it sits in there for 24 hours. That's only if they didn't put in more wine within those 24 hours and they didn't take out. What if you add more wine or you take out wine, then that's not considered kovesh, because that makes it's a Rebbe Kiva Eger as far as
can you refill these barrels? Can you refill these?
Yeah, as long as it didn't sit idle for 24 hours and the wine was moving either to come in or to go out, that's not called kovesh. Right? So that's an interesting. Obviously you have to have a lot of betachan in the emunas chachamim with this, because all this stuff, all this science, hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago, I didn't know that you fill it up 3 times and let it soak, and it's going to take out the taste. I don't know. Yurches, klis chuchis. So this is a common shaila that gets asked, and a lot of misunderstanding with this. Klis chuchis, glass, kivan shehem chalakim v'koshim, since they're smooth and very strong. Even though you store wine in these glass barrels or bottles, it's enough to wash it out. So let's say somebody wanted to use a wine bottle from a non-kosher wine. So you can say, oh, it's been sitting in there for days. So the Kitzur's paskening, no, since glass does not absorb taste as much, therefore you don't need to kasher it with heat. You could just fill it up and empty it out. Now, this is where you get into the whole controversy. Can you have one set of glasses for milchiks and fleishiks? Because do we say that they don't absorb the taste, or they do absorb the taste? So normally Sfardim hold that it does not absorb, and they can have milchiks and fleishiks with glass. And Ashkenazim, though are usually more strict. Okay, you test. Let's say you had a utensil that had our wine in it, and then you poured out the wine. And when the kli was still wet from wine, meaning wet is defined as it's wet enough to make something that touches it wet. Right? Sometimes you sit down, you feel a chair after the rain, you feel a chair and you feel it, and it doesn't feel wet. But then when you sit down on it for a little bit, then you become wet. Right? So the question is that toifeach? It's wet al menas latfiach. There's two different levels of wet. Something can be wet, but it's not wet enough to make something else wet. Right? So noga shamay become. Let's say a guy touches that empty barrel or bottle. It's enough to wash it 3 times. Even though it is normally a kli that you use it for kiyum. Fine. This that it helps to wash out and do this irui, meaning this 3-day process. That's only if the barrels were used with cold. But if you use the barrels with hot, then it would need hagala like any other isser. Glasses, me'ikar adin, though for Pesach, we say that you can really do milui ve'iri, and that's enough. Because it's questionable whether our glasses ever have hot chametz in it in the first place. Okay, chaf aleph kli hagas. So kalim from the actual wine press. Even though you can't, they usually a wine press is constantly producing wine, so it's not sitting in there for a long time. Since it's used with a lot, meaning there's constantly lots and lots of wine going through, so then it's stricter. And you need a big shelas chacham how to make it kosher. So again, that's where you get into the difficulty with kashering plants that produce wine. The wine presses, even though they're idle at that point, to sort of kasher them is not so simple. Okay, we'll stop there. I have no idea why they didn't just say do chaf beis. Chaf beis, it could have just done chaf beis, but okay. Coming up is now Hilchos Brachos. So lots of technical information. All right. Have a fine night, everybody.